The world woke up this morning to a geopolitical shockwave that could rewrite the rules of global trade, trigger an energy catastrophe, and push three nuclear-armed powers into direct confrontation. The United States Navy is now enforcing a blockade of Iran. Not a warning, not a threat, a blockade, as of 10 a.m. Eastern Time today, U.S. Central Command has ordered the sealing of all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most strategically vital waterways on the face of the earth. 20% of the world's oil passes through that narrow channel, and right now, American warships are positioned to choke it. Beijing is furious. Tehran is defiant. And the question every analyst, every energy minister, every military commander is asking right now is the same. How close are we to the point of no return? To understand the gravity of what's happening, you need to understand the sequence of events that brought us to this moment. Because this didn't happen overnight. For weeks, diplomatic back channels between Washington and Tehran had been quietly active, with negotiations reportedly taking place in Pakistan in a last-ditch effort to prevent military escalation. Those talks, according to multiple open-source reports, collapsed completely. And within hours of that failure, President Donald Trump gave the order. On Sunday, the directive went out to U.S. Central Command, enforce a full naval blockade targeting ships moving in and out of Iranian ports. CENTCOM was careful to specify that other vessels, those not bound for Iran, would be permitted to transit the strait freely. But for Iranian maritime commerce, the door is now shut. By Monday morning, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun was standing at a podium in Beijing calling on, quote, all parties to exercise calm and restraint, in a situation that is anything but. Let's talk geography, because this is where the military reality gets truly alarming. The Strait of Hormuz is, at its narrowest point, roughly 33 kilometers wide. It connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and then out to global shipping lanes. Every single day, roughly 17 to 21 million barrels of oil pass through it. Tankers carrying energy from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, and Iran to markets across Asia, Europe, and beyond. There is no viable alternative route that can absorb that volume of traffic. You cannot simply reroute the global oil supply overnight. Pipelines help, but they are nowhere near sufficient. And for China, the stakes here are not just high. They are existential. According to a Politico analysis, Iran alone exported 520 million barrels of crude oil to China in the course of 2025. On top of that, another 1.4 billion barrels came from 5 other Gulf states whose shipping also depends on clear passage through Hormuz. Add that up, and you're looking at more than half of China's entire crude oil import supply potentially disrupted by this blockade. More than half. Reuters has previously reported that China accounts for over 80% of all Iranian oil exports. Beijing isn't just an interested party in this standoff, it is perhaps the most economically exposed nation on the planet right now. And yet, China's public position remains one of calculated restraint, at least in words. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo Jiakun made 2 significant statements today. First, the call for de-escalation, framing the blockade as a threat to, quote, the security, stability, and unimpeded passage of international waters. Language designed to appeal to the broader international community, not just Tehran. But the second statement was arguably more revealing. CNN, citing U.S. intelligence sources, had reported that Beijing was preparing to deliver MANPADS, man-portable air defense systems, to Iran, potentially within weeks. These are shoulder-fired, surface-to-air missile systems, capable of engaging low-flying aircraft and helicopters. In the hands of Iranian forces or their proxies, they represent a serious asymmetric threat to U.S. and allied air assets in the region. Guo flatly denied it. China, he said, has always adopted a cautious and responsible attitude towards the export of military items, dismissing the reports as, quote, groundless smears and malicious associations. Washington isn't buying it. Whether or not MANPADS are en route, the very allegation, and the timing of its publication, signals something important. U.S. intelligence is watching Chinese logistics with extreme scrutiny. And according to open source analysis, the window between allegation and delivery in past proxy conflicts has often been measured in weeks, not months. Here's where the story moves from dangerous to potentially civilization-altering. Both Beijing and Washington know that direct military confrontation is off the table, for now. But economic warfare? That battlefield is already active. China controls approximately 90% of the world's rare earth mineral refining capacity. These are the elements that go into semiconductors, electric vehicles, advanced weapon systems, and virtually every piece of modern technology that powers a 21st century military. A Washington Post analysis described how both China and Iran have, quote, weaponized elements of the global economy to counter American pressure. Think about what that means in practice. The United States enforces an oil blockade. China responds, not with warships, but with export restrictions on neodymium, dysprosium, or cobalt. Suddenly, the production lines for American F-35s, precision-guided munitions, and next-generation naval systems face critical material shortages. This is the new face of great power conflict. Not bullets and bombs, at least not yet. But supply chains turned into weapons. Trade routes weaponized. The global economy is a battlefield. Let's bring this down from the strategic to the human level, because behind every barrel of oil is a supply chain that affects real people. Energy market analysts are already sounding alarms. A sustained blockade of Iranian ports, even one that allows third-party shipping to pass, sends a psychological shockwave through oil futures markets. Prices spike. Inflation follows. For families in Europe, Asia, and across the developing world who are already stretched thin by years of economic turbulence, a sustained Hormuz crisis could mean higher heating bills, more expensive food, and cascading economic pain. In Iran itself, the blockade represents a strangling of the economy at the port level. Ordinary Iranian citizens are already living under decades of sanctions, already navigating a difficult daily existence, now face the prospect of even their government's remaining oil revenues being cut off. This is not an abstract geopolitical chess move. This has consequences for mothers trying to buy medicine, for workers whose factories depend on imported components, for a population caught between a defiant government and an increasingly aggressive external pressure campaign. And here's the detail that makes this entire situation even more volatile. In exactly 1 month, on May 14th and 15th, President Trump is scheduled to travel to Beijing for a summit with President Xi Jinping. According to reports, this would mark the first U.S. presidential visit to China in nearly a decade. The optics were supposed to signal a managed détente between the world's two superpowers. Now, that summit is taking place in the shadow of a naval blockade, weapons transfer allegations, and a potential energy crisis that Beijing views as a direct threat to its national security. Can that meeting still happen in a productive way? Or does the Hormuz crisis poison the atmosphere before Air Force One ever leaves the tarmac? Here is where we stand tonight. American warships hold the line at the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian ports are sealed. China watches more than half its oil supply hanging in the balance. Allegations of weapons, transfers fill intelligence cables. And a presidential summit that could define the next decade of U.S.-China relations is now 30 days away, under conditions no one in Washington or Beijing anticipated. The question is not whether this blockade creates pressure. It already has. The question is, who blinks first? Because if no one does, if Tehran refuses to return to the negotiating table, if Beijing decides its economic pain is reason enough to escalate, if one miscalculation at sea or in the air sparks a direct incident between forces, then what we are watching right now is not a blockade. It's the opening move of something far, far larger. Stay with us, because in the next 48 hours, everything could change.